Absolutely.
And feeling good.
And it does lead to one of our next things that we wanted to talk about is if you're coming here and visiting, right? You come here as a visitor, and everything, if you're looking at it from a vacation standpoint, everything is just so magical and everything just flows.
Like what they say, the rose-colored glasses.
Rose-colored glasses just flows. If you go from visiting to migrating, whether you're coming here for a couple of weeks, longer time to figure out if this is a place for you, a couple months, you're migrating. I know this is a thing back in the States about being Karen, being a Karen.
Yeah.
Coming with a sense of entitlement.
Yep.
Belizeans, on a whole, are very proud people.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, if you come to my store or wherever I used to work, at LC's where I work, and you came with that attitude, I would try my best to just get you served and out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because at the end of the day, you're a paying customer.
Yep.
But there were a couple of times that clients stepped over the line. And this is one thing because I had a great relationship with my employer. My employer trusts my judgment to know that if I did something, it was because, and he knew it. And he was like,
Yep.
yeah, Job is the client, Job is the guy who deals with the difficult clients.
The client was really wrong then. So if you've ever been wronged by Job or felt wronged by Job, you deserved it.
Or maybe you got me on a bad mood.
Yeah,
Maybe. All right. But in those moments when they did step out of line, I chased one out of the shop. Like I chased him out. And he's like, I'm like, dude, I'll give you my boss's number. You can call him.
Yeah.
He'll understand. So if you're coming from the States as a visitor and you're migrating to here, realize, please, if in the States you're kind of called a current, you need to dial that down here. Like we still want you because we're great people,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have to dial that down. And you can give your perspective on
Yeah,
that.
no, and I agree with that entirely, right? And so I know one of the big examples of this too is when you are making the decision to spend more time here as a foreigner, right? So you're not a resident at this point, you're not a citizen. As a foreigner, and that's what you're a foreigner, you get a tourist visa. And the tourist visa is valid for 30 days at a time. And so you have to check your passport to make sure that you're going to immigration office to get your passport stamped every 30 days. And whether or not people realize this or don't realize this, maybe they don't go to immigration at the 30-day mark, right? They look at their passport, realize their stamp expired, and 10 days later, after it expires, they're going to immigration and they're like demanding that they get their passport stamped. Well, technically, Belize can kick you out at that point. And I always tell clients to remember from the perspective of if there was somebody in your home country who overstayed their visa, you know, how would you feel about that, or how would you react to it? So when you're going into the immigration office, just like kill them with kindness. You know, bring some chocolates, bring some cookies, right? Go in and really be sincere about what happened and why it is that you forgot. Now, if you just don't go because you feel like you don't want to go to immigration that day, well, that's on you, right? And that's the entitlement part that we were talking about. But I hear it all the time from expats who come here, and like especially people who are just starting to move down, they have this sense of, well, I should be a resident, and you know, I've contributed this much to the economy, and this I've given this many jobs, and this and this and this, and I demand my residency. And again, thinking back to what is the residency process in your home country, and I gotta say, I've worked all throughout the region here in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, Belize, and Belize is probably one of the easiest residency programs that I've ever seen. Truly, it really is. Where you only have to spend you have to live here for a full year. Right, you can leave up to 14 days during that time, and after you fulfill that requirement, there are other things, you have a clean background check and whatnot, but once you fulfill that time requirement, then you can apply for residency, and it truly is one of the easiest that I've ever seen. And yet people still come in and are like, well, I don't know if I can stay in Belize for a full year. Okay, great, then maybe you're not a great resident or a great candidate for residency.
Exactly.
Right? Like we have our friends in the States or friends who are migrating to the States, or even from Canada, moving from Canada to the States. And you typically have to stay in the United States during the time that you're applying for your residency, which can be years, right? It can be years. And so when you're thinking about it, take yourself out of your head, right? And go into the perspective of this is what the requirements are from the country. This is how I'm going to fulfill them. And now that's what I'm going to, and how I'm going to apply for the residency. And I know I've been through the work permit process. We did that many times. had some hiccups, issues with it, went through the residency process. First time I had some hiccups with it, not necessarily because of any background check issues or anything like that, but because our attorney wasn't necessarily the best. But you get over that. You get over those humps. And once you do fulfill those requirements, I have to say being a resident in this country is so much easier than being a tourist, right? Just from so many different perspectives of even opening a bank account here is a lot easier. Opening a company is cheaper if you're a resident versus if you're not. So there's just a lot that goes into the residency process and into that whole relocation process that I think is important for at least expats or people who are planning to migrate to know and understand.
Exactly. And for example, if I would go to the States, I would go on a tourist visa. How would that look for me trying to get a residence in the States?
I mean, I don't know the exact process, but it's a process.
Yes,
It is an absolute process. It takes
I wish it would
years,
be a year.
years for people to.
And I get why, because it's US or whatever. But look at it this way: if anyone knows about those things, it's Rachel. She's been there. She's done that.
Yep.
Not once, multiple times. She has the experience for it. And another thing that leads us when you're migrating here is
Culture
rental.
shock? Oh, I was going to say culture shock.
Well, that's one thing that we're going to talk about the rental opportunities.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of back in the States, there's like a lot of websites and listings where you can go look for rentals. The rental market here in Belize, it's so different. It's very informal.
Yes.
It is a lot by word of mouth.
Yeah.
And it's a lot when it comes to do by Facebook groups and WhatsApp. There's not like a established structure on it. And because I have a lot of documents and articles, when someone asks me, how about rentals? Well, here's this article that I have for you. And out of that article, I have 5 property management dear information that I would suggest you reach out to.
Right.
But even them, sometimes, like when something goes vacant, like it gets picked up pretty quickly, like really pretty quickly. And in that list, like I have like the complexes that do probably long-term rentals, like I have like Royal Palm.
Oh yeah, Royal Palm.
Royal Palm. There's specific spots that do cater for long-term rentals. And that, with that said, that is very important for people to know. And it's also very important for people to know the kind of, both from a local perspective and from an expat or tourist visa, if you're here in a tourist visa, rent is kind of expensive here.
It's not as cheap, I think, as some people think that it is. And even over the last couple of years too, I mean, there's inflation around the world, right? So everything has increased in price generally, but it's not as cheap as people think. And I think also too, because of the island that we're on, just the cost of living is more expensive, right? Because things all have to be shipped over. So you have your rent, you have your food bills, you have your utility bills. It adds up, right? It adds up. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of clients who are like, oh, our budget is $800 US for a rental, and it all includes all utilities. And I'm like, okay, well, what's important to you to have in that rental, right? Do you want hot water? Do you want air conditioning? Like, what is your priority for you when it comes to rentals? Because I can find you something in that range, but it probably won't have all the things. Oh, and the best, like when they're like, oh, we'll walk to the beach, like to be within close distance to the beach and be within close distance to this. It's just not really, and have the AC and have the hot water. Like, it's just not really realistic. But like, that's where I think, at least from our business perspective, because we deal with clients in real estate, is clients have to research, right? Like, it's not up to us. I mean, we're here to help, obviously, but it's not up to us to tell you what your cost of living is going to be. That's where you have to come down and see things yourself. Because
the price is going to vary greatly as well.
Yep.
Like, for example, for a local and rentals.
Yep.
This is the a local perspective on the rental market here in the island. I am personally blessed that even after I left LC Distributors, I still rent out of my previous employer, and he gives me a decent price for what I get. I get a 2-bedroom.
It's big
one that
space,
it has ocean breeze, so I get a really good deal. I really do. But I see for locals out there, it's
It's hard.
You're going to pay a lot of money for something so small, maybe not even that comfortable, and it's like, Jesus Christ. That's where I count my blessings. But even for a local, if you're wanting to come and live here in the island, realize that you're probably going to be better off roommating with someone.
Mhm.
You really are going to be better off with roommating with someone. And if you want to live anywhere in close to the downtown area, you're going to be paying a lot of money.
So where, Joe, like from the local perspective, like where do you, let's say you had to move next month, where would you find your potential place to live next?
Well, I've lived in the island a lot, and a couple places, areas. San Pablo being one of them.
Yep. Oh,
We have San Pablo is a really nice mix of both.
Yep.
I've also lived in the Boca del Rio area,
Mhm.
in the Rio side, Lagoon side, and then I've also lived in the San Marcos area, which is right after San Pablo.
Right.
San Pablo, for a lot of spots in San Pablo, have the canal access.
Mhm.
San Marcos doesn't have any water access. I know big spots, nice areas are like, for example, the DFC. But even the DFC now, with all those paving of roads that are happening and all those values of properties going up, I'm going to start seeing a lot more apartment complexes go up in price, and also obviously new builds as well,
Yep.
which is great because the accessibility now becomes better.
Right.
But then that will also increase in rental prices.
Right.
So
I hear you saying, what I hear you saying is there's great business opportunity for somebody who wants to invest in affordable housing here.
absolutely, and look, there's a difference. And for locals, we don't need as much stuff as probably an expert.
Right.
Like we can live without an air conditioner.
Right.
We can live without hot water. We can live without, like such a fancy granite countertop and new stuff, which for us is fine because for us it's a working item.
Yep.
I don't spend any time at my place.
Right.
Like I literally only spend the rent to sleep in and to shower. 'Cause I don't spend any time at my place. I'm always out working or pretending to work.
Having sober Septembers. Yeah.
Sober Septembers. So yeah, for us it's different. And here's come when I get clients reach out to me and they tell me, "Hey Joe, I want to live where the locals lives." And I'm like, do you know where the locals live? Because you might think that it's like, I'm not saying that there's a big discrepancy in, the areas, because everywhere here in the island is pretty safe.
I say safe.
But there are some areas that are truly better than other areas.
Well, and some that are just not as accessible,
Yeah.
right? Where they don't have the paved road, so you're going to be going through bumps and like swamps at some point during rainy season,
Exactly.
right? So you don't necessarily have that access. You don't necessarily have just the conveniences of
You
things
might have
either.
your dogs bark,
Right.
neighbors start barking all night.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say where I live, but where I live, at the side, there's an apartment building, and every other night, there's a problem. Like I hear someone getting too drunk and yelling and having a fight with their partner and getting kicked out, and it is hilarious. It is hilarious. But again, that is where the locals live because that's where the more affordable housing is.
Yeah.
So when you do come here, you realize. And now when you transition from being an immigrant to being more of a resident, you probably be okay with living in those areas as well.
Right.
Because you've
are.
been there,
you
you've
are.
done that, you don't care. Now you can get a beachfront condo and live there as well, but you're gonna pay a lot more money for that.
Yeah.
You're definitely gonna pay. I would say a
Did you
property.
see that condo in Belizean and Key Cocker? So it's a different island, but the one in Belizean is going to be like $4,500 US a month
For how much?
for the two bath at Belizean. I know, I'm just like, what? I mean, that's not really even within the standard market numbers, right?
No,
But
I mean, a
it's just
2 bed 2 buy here
crazy.
beachfront would be like around there, like 2,500.
Yeah, that's about right.
US.
That's right.
Now, realistically speaking,
US, yep.
you could rent a nice 2-bedroom, nice apartment, which is not in the beachfront, probably in a nice area like DFC, which is getting nicer now, for probably about $1,000 US.
Right.
You really could,
Yeah.
which is like half or even less than half of what you would rent.
Right.
So again, we can't really give you a budget, man, because every budget is just gonna be different.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to come here and figure it out for yourself. And rental wise, you probably could get something online, but it's a lot better for you to be here and actually
Agreed.
apartment rent. And I just closed on a client that he's wanting to build, and he told me about rentals, and I sent him that info that I have, and I'm like, good luck. But he told me, and now he's back, and he's like, Joe, it's so hard to find something nice that I want to rent here. Yes, it is, because the demand is there, and whenever something comes up in the market, it gets posted on those rent groups on Facebook, and it just goes like this.
It's quick.
And especially if someone who is already familiar with the island,
Oh, they're already there.
they're already there. They don't need to see it.
Right.
So if you're just first time coming or you're not that familiar with it, you're going to have to be here. So you're gonna be in a little disadvantage when it comes to apartment picking. And that really does lead us to the next thing we want to talk, which is the food cost.
Yes.
Food costs here can be, well, it's not cheap compared to the mainland.
Right.
Because remember, everything has to be boated here, everything has to be brought here on barges on sail. You know, you have the Tuesday mornings, the 6 in the morning where
It's dedication. To
you
get
get
the produce.
you get fresh produce from the Mennonites and from the locals from the mainland that bring it on sailboats. And even them, you know, they sell at a much more affordable cost. But you have to get up at 6 in the morning and be there.
Be there by 6.
By 6. By
Because
6.
You're competing with the restaurants.
You're competing with the restaurants. Seafood is the next thing. You're competing with the restaurants that buy out by big bulk.
Yep.
And even if you're buying at the most affordable places here in the island, compared to anywhere in the mainland, for maybe exception of Placentia might be able to like match our price, it's like twice the cost.
It is. And I remember too going to Cayo in San Ignacio and getting a block of the Philadelphia cream cheese, and it was, I think it was $5.95 or $4.95.
Here it's $9.99.
At least, or
About
they have been
$10.
some places it's like $10.95, so it's double. And then even Gatorade out there was $2.75 a bottle. Here, one of my coworkers came in. He was running errands. Like, do you want me to get you anything? I was like, maybe you just got me a Gatorade. And he came back and it was like this big one with a little twisty top. He goes, it was $11.95. Now you can get the other ones with like the big tops for about $5 Belize. But he was having a hard time finding them. He's like, I hope this is fine with you. It was like $11.95 for this. I was like, well, I'm gonna think it's still in the fridge over there, but
but the thing is,
it is what it is.
A
You
lot
can
of
budget for it.
Absolutely, and a lot of people, I've seen this comment come up a lot of times, and I just have sometimes I politely just redirect it because I say, oh, but this doesn't cost as much in the U.S.
Well, we're not in the U.S.
Well, I don't say it that way, but I say, well, if you think about it, if you're wanting anything U.S. brand, bear in mind, we bring it from the U.S. Stamp duty in Belize for importation of almost anything is very high.
Well, customs fees are high here. Yep.
We have a very strong tourism market, but we don't have much of a production market.
Exactly.
We mostly export a lot of raw goods, but we don't create a lot of products.
Right.
And for that reason, we are highly dependent on importation, and the government has high taxation on them. So if in the States it already costs, and then you bring it to Belize, it already has all that importation duty, and then whoever distributor in Belize has to send it to San Pedro, and then the San Pedro company has to buy it from them. You add the transportation costs and everything on top of all of that has cost, and then they have to make a profit. If you're going to be here and you're loving US brands, especially for like soaps and what's that, do know that you're going to be paying a lot more money for
that product. And that's just exactly what you were saying. You said just like perfectly there. If you want those US brands, you're going to pay for it, but you can find the equivalent, or in a lot of cases, a very similar product.
Mexican one.
Yeah, the Mexican one for cheaper, for less, right? So you can try something different and see how you like that compared to the US brand or American brand. But it is just so funny sometimes when people come down and Well, I think let me say the big thing is the expiration dates. In the United States, there's the FDA, and if you are a supermarket, you cannot sell anything that's expired. It has to be off the shelf. So they'll start sales of products that are going to be expiring, X amount of time before the product actually expires. Here, sometimes there's no indication that it's even expired, right? You have to be the one to look at the cheese, look at the cream cheese, to look at the yogurt, and think, oh, this expired last month. Am I okay with it being a month-old dairy? There are some products like Oreos or something, or where it's like so many preservatives. I'm like, it's fine. It's no problem. But like the funniest is if you go into some of these comments on your field of Facebook, like a lot of this comes back from the expats or the visitors who are here like, oh my God, I can't believe it. X grocery store, I'm not going to give the names, at this grocery store they're serving expired foods, how unhealthy, how unsanitary, and then the comments are just like, oh, where are you going where it's not expired? You just brush off a little bit of the dust and you're like, yeah, this is fine, a month old, I'll be all right. Or you get to open up the yogurt and there's like a little film on it. Yeah, just clean that film off and go underneath, you'll be fine, you'll survive. But you just
yogurt story, right? I was over at the store the other day and I bought a Lala yogurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think some just came in right now. Oh, this is the container.
And I went there and it was like a couple days, like probably a week or so to expire. And I live on my own, so I don't consume it as fast. I'm like, I think I could consume it, and then whatever, if it does expire, I probably could consume after. And I was doing so because one of those usually lasts me like about a week or two, right? Okay. And on the second week when it already expired, right around the last days, you know how that area is usually very like liquidy? Like,
yes.
I took it out and it started to look like cheese. I'm like, no, that's not. I think this is probably time for me to cut my losses and throw it out. But it is a thing here.
It is. What are those little bugs that are in the cereals and the pasta?
Little bichitos?
Yes,
we call them bichitos. Little ones that they're so small.
Bichitos? Is there another name? Weeples or something?
I don't know. I call them bichitos.
But like, you get that too, right? And I've had clients say, we went to this grocery store and there were the little bichitos. the bichitos in the pasta. I'm like, oh, you just put the pasta in the pot anyway. It's going to boil and they'll die, so it's not really a big deal. But you just kind of get used to this over time, right? And it just is their reality. And then we joke about it when we go back to the States and I'm visiting family in New York, and I'm like, wow, everything's so fresh here.
But you do get fresh fruit here.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
And fruit you will not get as fresher anywhere else.
Well, and it's nice too because it's like it is really fresh and there's not the preservatives in it. Where if you're buying bananas today, you eat them all in the next few days because they're not going to sit there and mature more and be. Well, I guess they'll get quite brown within a few days, but it's not like you're going to have the fruit sitting on your counter for 3 weeks and it'll still be good to eat after the third week. So
exactly. No.
That's the part that I appreciate.
Fruits will probably last more like a week at max.
Yeah.
That's pushing it and keeping it on the fridge and But when it comes to actual items, we have that issue when it comes to expired goods and whatnot.
Just check the date.
Just check the date. And I'm not saying that it's always the case. It's just something that comes up all the time.
It does. It's just part of living here.
It's just part of living here.
There's the one grocery store where they will recognize that it's expired and then they'll put a little sale tag on it. And then you go to the register and they're like, this is on sale. Is that okay? And at first I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Like, give me more.
Deal.
And then I realized that because it was expired and they're just trying to clear out inventory. But, again, the things that you learn and you just kind of
do it. When it comes to migrating here, a lot of the questions I see out there is, can I work from Belize if I'm working for a foreign-based company off of my home? I would say yes. But I'm not sure what's the legal stance on it. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of the technical part of it, but if you come down on a tourist visa, you are not allowed to work for a Belizean company here, right? If you have your laptop, you're doing your work online, and you're not taking away a job from a local, you're not getting paid by a Belizean company, then you're okay, from my understanding, right? I'd obviously consult with an attorney if that's what your long-term plan is, but if you're planning to work for a Belizean company, you do need to either get a work permit or have your residency here, or of course be a citizen in order to do that. And so many times I see people, they're like, great, well, we want to come down and we just want to bartend, or we just want to do this. And it's like, okay, well, great, go through the proper channels to do it. Get your work permit.
But you're not gonna get a work permit for bartending.
No, you're not because you're taking away a job from a local, right? And that's not something that you really be wanting to do if you're coming down. So you also have to realize that your cost of living here may be less than it is in your home country, but the wages here are also lower than what they are in your home country. So you have to put that into consideration. So when I have clients who want to move here and still need to make an income, I say, find what you can do online. And then when you come down, you can establish yourself in the community through activities and meet people. But don't plan to get a job down here because
I've seen...
It's a bit more challenging.
Yes, absolutely. It's a bit more challenging. You probably could get a work permit if you first open your own corporation,
Yes,
open
of
your own
course.
business. That's how you can get a work permit and work from here. And there's a lot of like blurred lines of what actually you can do as a business owner, But for most of the body, let's say example, nurse, I've seen a couple of nurses that are like foreign nurses, but they haven't been here for like a year. It's like people that probably are already even residents or even citizens
here,
that are working, but they're expats, but because they're American, but they're probably resident or citizen already in a place for that. And with the residency, you can work, right?
Yeah, with residency, you get it's a little interesting here in the country because a lot of countries require you to be a resident, and then once you're a resident, you can get your work permit, or then you have legal status to do so. Here in Belize, you can get your work permit first and then apply for residency. So like through the corporation, if you open up your corporation like you were talking about, then you would apply for your work permit. If you do end up getting a job down here, that company can sponsor you and get your work permit for you. But you can do that, and I don't know the exact amount of years that you can have a continuous work permit for, and then you can apply for your residency once you've hit that threshold, once you've hit those X number of continuous work permits. So it's something else for people to consider too.
And that we're just right around going in from, okay, you're no longer just visiting. You're no longer just migrating and checking out the stuff. You're not just testing out the waters. Now you're becoming a resident. You're an actual resident. Where if you're applying for residency, there's a process, there's things. But we're not going to go through those things. We're probably going to have references, links that you can go in
Talk
the
to the
description.
attorneys about that. We don't want people to come back to us and say, well, you told us.
Exactly. That too, But there are good articles online on that. And
Ryan Rovell does a really nice job. He's an attorney here in the country that helps people
does a good job
with the residencies.
Another thing that you need to know is, I can assure you, for 80% of the questions that you might have, there's already an answer out there in Google. And sometimes I see it visitors ask questions in groups. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, did you even Google it?
I know.
Did you Google it before you asked us? And there's so much, because we are a very dependent country on tourism. There's so much content out there for everything.
Yep.
So you just have to literally sometimes Google it. And I know sometimes you can Google something and it's not just there, or you're not sure how reliable that information is anymore, if it's outdated or what's not. Then you can maybe go ahead and ask it.
Well, and I can tell you a good story about that. So for me, I got the residency here, and I didn't know that you had to get a license here, right? A Belizean license. And I have my license from the States still. It's still valid for another 5 years or whatever it is. But I was in Cayo. I was driving a rental car, and they just had checkpoints. And I opened up my wallet. The guy saw my residency card, and then he saw I handed him my driver's license, and he's like, how long have you been here? And I was like, I've had a residency for a year or two, whatever it was at that time. And he was like, you need to get a Belizean driver's license. And I was like, okay, well, sounds fair enough. So I was asking around to some people about it, and like, you can, since you already have a valid driver's license, you can just show that to the equivalent of the Department of Transportation here, and then you pay X amount of dollars or whatever it costs to get your driver's license. And so I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. So I'm just Googling online to see. And so it's be like, yeah, that's how easy it is if you already have a valid driver's license. I get to the Department of Transportation, I'm like, all right, I have my driver's license. I just want to get a Belizean one because that's what the police informed me that I needed to do. And like, oh no, you need to take the permit test. You get the permit test. You need to take the practical or whatever it is, the driving portion of it. And I was like, is this a joke? And I'm 32. I had my license for 16, 17 years at this point. You know, I'm from New York. I've driven in the city. Like, I get it. Like, I'm in another country, so I have to abide by their rules. But I was like, really? Like, I need to go through all this? So they gave me a study guide. And I'm going through the study guide, and our friend Mary was supposed to be getting her driver's test at the same time. So Mary worked on that. But we were going through the permit questions on the written test, and it was like, if you're at the corner of this street and this street, and I don't even remember, like, it didn't say where these streets were in the country either, right? It's like, who has the right of way? You stop, who has the right of way? And I'm like Googling to see where these streets are and if I'm ever going to come across them. Turns out they were in Belize City. But you still have to fill out those answers on the test that they give you here. And I don't know what I ended up getting on the test. I mean, I actually did study for it because some of the questions were so obscure. And some of the content on there that you had to remember. Like, I remember one thing said, don't drive with a baby on your lap because the baby could distract you, right? And it's not like because it's dangerous or if you get into a car accident, the baby could get killed. It's like, it could distract you. And I was like, okay then. Or like if you're on a bridge and it's raining, what do you do with your lights? Like, you dim them, right? Because then if the bridge is bouncing, because there's a lot of swing bridges here, if the bridge is bouncing and you have your high beams on, then it's going to blind somebody who's coming forward. So like these things that I just didn't think about because we don't really have swing bridges where I grew up. So I did actually study for it, got that part, and then I had to do the driving test. And so the golf cart that I had, so I booked the driving test. The golf cart that I had only had one mirror on the left-hand side. And so I was in the cart with the transportation guy, and he's like, all right, we're going to pull over here to the side of the road, and then you're going to back up, like parallel park to the side of the road, and then you're going to back up down this alley here, but you can only use your mirror. Now, I can tell you that when we took my driving test, 16, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, they would tell us to never just use our mirror because objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. And so I'm like, I can't like turn my head or anything. So I'm like this, trying to look behind me as I'm parallel park at that part, and then had to go backwards and then down this narrow alley, maybe it's about 5 feet, 6 feet wide. And I'm just using the mirror. Like he catches me going like this. And he's like, no head, just look in the mirror. And I don't have this mirror over here because that was in the golf cart that I had. And so I'm like looking in this one over here, and I bumped into things a couple of times going backwards. And I was like, are you sure I only have to use my mirror? Like, should I be able to turn my head too? He's like, nope. He's like, I'm not going to show you what it says here on this sheet, but you have to be able to only use your mirror. And it's like, I bumped a couple times, and the guy ends up, he's like, you know what, I'm going to get off of the golf cart. He's like, I'm going to stand back here. Why don't you try to bring the cart back to me? And I'm like, and it's a straight alley. It's not like you're going left or right? It's a straight alley. But because the mirror, things are a little bit closer, so you're just curving a little bit more. And finally he's like, you know what, I'm going to get back in the cart. Let's go. Like, you're fine. Let's just go. And I was like, but is there really ever a circumstance where I'm not going to be able to turn my head? Like, if I have a neck brace on, I'm probably not going to be driving. But it was like things like that where I did Google it beforehand to see if I actually needed to take all of these tests. And then they told me that I did need to take the test. So sometimes what you find on Google, where I'm going with this in a roundabout way, is sometimes what you see on Google is not always accurate, or sometimes it's somebody's personal experience, right? I bet like there are people after me who went in and had their driver's license and then just paid whatever it was and got a new license without having to do all that. So it does sometimes depend on your personal experience. It depends also what parties in the government, because they change policies at times too.
So policies always be changing.
Always.
And depending on the officer and how he's feeling that day.
Yep.
And that's the next thing. If you go in one day and you have this specific, let's say you're going to stamp your passport, and you go in West one day, you have this one officer, and he tells you one thing. Yep. And he lets you go or stamps your passport, or you were late. Let's say you were late, and he comes in and you come in and he stamps your passport. and you are off. Yeah, cool. Kudos for you. Then another time it happens and you come and there's a different officer.
Yep.
The officer is going to have might have a different mentality or opinion on it.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to do with maybe they're not having such a good day.
Yeah,
you know?
maybe you didn't bring them the right cookies that they
Yeah,
liked.
maybe you didn't bring them the right cookies. But that happens. You don't sit there and argue with him and say, "Oh, well, this one did it this way." No, that is your one mistake that you will always do when it comes to any officer here in Belize. Just try to comply with them, and you might save yourself a lot of trouble by not being argumentative with them. Or, one thing I know always works.
Tell us your secrets. Tell us the way to charm Joe.
Don't be naive. Obviously not too naive.
Yeah.
But just ask them. Make them feel like, oh, I'm sorry, but tell me what can I do to, and
so that doesn't happen again.
So it doesn't happen again. And for the most part, Belize is a beautiful person. Belize has beautiful people, and they're very kind, and we naturally have a good customer service. So if you do come across that, you being a little bit more humble, and just being like, oh, maybe I did messed up. I'm sorry.
Right.
How can we what can I do and what's not? It will open doors for you instead of being argumentative with the officer. Because no matter if the other officer allowed it or slide it, if this guy says no, you being argumentative with him will not help. And this comes with when it comes to anywhere.